morning, ladies and gents. It's combat time. It's time to work on more combat. Yesterday when we started in, we made ourselves a basic UI, we imported a couple features, we did a little bit to get the game kind of working as we expect it to when it comes to combat, but we need to do a little more, because right now the UI is little more than just bits and pieces. There's not anything terribly specific to it. So we need to take care of those individual details. Also, what is this game object? This looks like a random... Okay. It's just a random object floating around my scene. I'm not even gonna... I'm not gonna worry about it. Alright, so, to pick up where we left off, the first big thing here is the fact that we have our combat UI, and actually I need to break this off into various pieces because we need sets and subsets of nodes here to take care of. For example, the actions that a character can take should all be one interface, and then you use that interface and I switch interface types. So this will be character action choices. I'll just call it action choices. We know it's the character's action, we just don't want to say it so obviously. I think the action header maybe should be a part of that. I'm trying to... Yeah, I think it should. Because I want different choices. One of the big things that got me about Wizardry and the way they did combat was, at least initially, it was not just, do I attack with my sword? It's, do I, like, swing my sword or do I thrust with my sword? And they both had different ups and downs. Thrust had a much higher chance of doing a critical hit, but also had a much lower chance to hit versus versus swing, which was just basic melee, nothing special about it. And then you'd get different things based on the details. So with like a quarterstaff, you wouldn't get bash unless you happened to be right up against somebody and you could really get them with that quarterstaff. Otherwise, you just got the usual swing. And I like having little sub-attacks like that. Little sub-categories that brace off of the main. It makes you feel like you're making more decisions or have more control. So yeah, that's kind of my thought here. Is that's part of why I want the multiple choices and I want it to trickle down the way it does. So yeah, so we've got our action choices, and then I also want another one of these main groups that's going to be action resolution. Basically, I tell him to attack, and then it says so-and-so attacks with the longsword. It's a hit, deals this much damage, right? We can do that fairly quickly, but we want that to be its own section, pretty much. And we can toggle the two back and forth to turn on and off the elements that we want. So our action resolution is probably going to look fairly similar to the action choices, except that instead of the usual buttons all the way down, and I'm just going to turn this off for a moment, instead of that, we're just going to go with some text. I'm actually going to bring this object actually, you know what? Let's just say that this spans the entirety of the object it is currently parented to. Oh, these aren't attached to the background. That kind of makes sense. It should be attached to the background, not the entire freaking canvas. There we go. And our text, which honestly is kind of the same, will at least go from end to end with it. There we go. Let's give it a little margin just so it doesn't kind of spill onto our graphics. We want to keep it from getting too ugly. And I don't think this will matter a ton, but we'll give it kind of some width just in case it needs to dump a ton of text out all at once. Trying to not say anything about the font. I know it's kind of bleh, but it shouldn't be too hard to fix in the future. Just requires me to go find a font I like, honestly, and that is a difficult thing for me to do sometimes. There we go. So there's our, what, we'll call it action text. I'm actually kind of tempted to start it at the top, which would mean I kind of want it a little lower down. Yeah, that looks good. In fact, why don't we just center it and put the whole frickin' thing in here? I'll probably find some reason that I'll think this is stupid later, but in the meantime, there we go. In the meantime, that doesn't look too bad. Just kind of testing out the spacing, seeing how it looks with multiple lines of text. Making sure that not only does it all fit, but it all looks decent. That's not too bad looking. And it's actually pretty legible from the 100% view. So that's not bad either. I like that. So the only thing I'm not a huge fan of is that it's all white text right now. Eventually I may switch that over, but also I can just turn on rich text and use colors there, so I'm not too worried about it. Alright, so turn that back off, turn our action choices back on, and the only thing really left at this point is that there's no scripts on any of this. We need to have something that is able to process not only the button clicks, but also handle the kind of the turn order. Make sure that as events are getting sent around that we handle those. So, new script. Gotta be consistent. Gotta be consistent. There we go. Consistency, right? I'm looking at my other files. Yeah, I use UI in a capital sense. That is fantastic. So it needs a few things. We need our characters is the big part here. We need some array of characters. We also probably need an array of monsters so that they can fight back. You know. And this is kind of, we're now getting to the point where I need to start figuring out how I want to define a monster in game or in Unity, so that as soon as I've defined it, I can then proceed to say, oh, well, I have 3 of these, 2 of these, and 1 of these, duh. And that'll allow me to keep better track of who's being attacked and what's being handled. So let's see here. We've got, yeah, as Morphic says, more scriptable objects. Honestly, that's kind of the best way to go with a lot of this. Let's see. It needs player characters. I'm probably going to follow this inventory item usage with the monsters. I'm just trying to think of any weird cases, once again, where this might be weird. Or where I might not want something to go crazy. The one thought I have is that I'm not sure if I want NPCs to be counted as... Well, okay, yes, and every NPC should be counted as a monster so that you can kill all the NPCs in the world and the game will literally not give any shits. When you pick a fight with a merchant, when you try and kick the snot out of an NPC who's talking too much, they should be able to fight back, right? It shouldn't break when you try and fight certain people. So I do want to make them all monsters. I'm trying to think of just the details behind some of this. It's hard to pre-plan everything. I try to anyway, though. So we'll want a new script and we'll call it, like, I have a player character script. I'm tempted to make a non-player character script. If only for the simplicity of understanding exactly what that character is. Especially, they should probably both base class off of the same details, so they have the same stat bars and all that information. It might be a little too in-depth for me to say, oh, my non-player characters are going to have the same exact kind of stats that my player characters will, but that's kind of how I built the RPG system at the same time. So I need to kind of keep that in mind when generating certain things. I'll say opponents for now. Yeah, I'm going to say just opponents. That works better. And then is there anything else? Oh, non-player character is a scriptable object. They need certain information, right? All NPCs need certain information. Specifically, let's see. I'm going to look at my player character real quick, see if I can't either steal things or... I mean, I don't want them to have inventory slots or any of this, but I do want them to have all that. Just for now, I'm going to keep the two separate, and I'm just going to copy and paste. The reason I'm not diving in and making the two exactly the same or doing some weird subclassing structure, excuse me, dog. Sorry about that. He's up earlier than usual. He's not actually usually awake by the time I start streaming. So the difference here is that because I have one is base class scriptable object and the other's base class is a mono behavior, I want to keep the two separated for now. That may not be the case in the end, but for now, I don't mind keeping the two kind of copy-paste twins, and then I can break it apart into various bits and pieces when I do see the need. We do need some obvious other information floating about, though. We need a name. We probably want a 3D model associated with it. I'll call this the combat template for now. Is that really true? Is that a combat template? I'll just call it model. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Name, model template. That's really all I care for now. For now, they're just going to start, like, the monsters are literally going to swing their fists. I need to come up maybe with a better way to do it. I might come up with, like, here's a list of spells you can cast. Here's a list of physical attacks you can make. But aside from that, I think we're good. At least in this realm. So we've got NPCs, we've got PCs, and then we've got Macs. Wait, no. Scripted fight begins combat. The party... So, okay, the party upon creating the combat UI needs to do a few things as well. Because our combat UI has this fancy schmancy combat UI attached to it. Or combat UI script. So, for each player character... Actually, wait. This is an easier way to do this. Characters is equal to get components in children that are our player characters. There we go. I'm pretty certain I'm going to need this in the future, so I'm just, well, no, I'm not going to do that. That's preemptive. I should not preemptively code anything. Just is like a bad idea in general. Yeah, and I'm going to return that combat UI script, so it wasn't actually preemptive. Turns out it wasn't. My bad. There we go. Now we have combat UI. And the scripted fight should be smart enough to recognize that it has combat UI script running around now. And we can start making our own modifications to it as well. For example, let's see here. We're going to create a list of, let's see. We want a list of monsters that we wish to add. So we're going to have a list of game objects? No, that's not quite right. We need the non-player character class. And as a good final step here, and this is actually going to be new monster.get component non-player character. And then as our final step, the combat UI script. There's a toArray function call we can do to simplify everything in the list down to an array and then pass it off. So there we go. Nice and simple. Now we've filled this out, we have to add, let's see here. I need to figure out where to put more things. I guess monsters are kinds of prefabs, right? Oh, and I don't have attached to my inventory item, or my, no. Is that right? No, it's the weapon item that has this create asset menu attached to it. We just have to attach that to our NPC. I did do that. Can I do it now? There it is. Non-player character. We'll call this our, I don't know, bat monster. Or I'll just call it a bat. I am lazy right now, and that is okay. Here's our forest bat, and here are the prefabs that come with. Oh crap, I remember it being that one. Nope. That one. Yes. Okay, cool, I got it. And it needs some stats. So let's give it some pretty pathetic stats all across the board. And just like that, we have a bat. Hey. Let's see here. So our scripted fight needs to know about a few things that are different now. It needs to know the non-player character array, not a game object array. And then when it goes to instantiate things, it should be instantiating things not from the non-player character class, but from the model template instead. So it can generate models for that type and then proceed to make the changes it needs to for that monster. Interesting. I seem to have a circular reference going on here. You'll note that my... I mean, it's not the end of the world here. It just seems silly. Excuse me. My non-player character class references a... Is that right? So my non-player character class references the model that needs to get instantiated. But then here, I'm working on the assumption that the model has a script attached to it. Because each model is technically a different monster. It's going to have different derived stats. So if it's if it takes damage specifically, then what ends up happening is I need to make sure that the correct model has damage attached to it. Huh. I either need some way for a non-player character class to control its model and information, or okay. Because the non-player character isn't so much... So in the same way that I can have instances of an item, that makes sense because the items don't really change. If I make a copy of an item, the item has no specific stats attached to it that are unique to that item. Am I just thinking about this wrong? Is that really all I'm doing? I mean, that could be the case, right? I could just be completely, like, overdoing it in terms of what I think is the case here. I need to think about this, because this is an interesting back and forth. It shouldn't be, but it feels like it is. Why don't I just pass more instances of things, instead of saying, here's a count? No, I'll just pass a set of instances of things, and that will be that. So no for loop here. Let's get rid of this crap. It's kind of terrifying anyway. Monsters to spawn index dot flying. I do still want a, I'm going to use monster index instead of monster count index here, but that should fix practically everything else. I wonder why this is complaining. Did I? Oh, I did. I messed up my my count of. There we go. And I'm just going to shift things around, make it a little more readable. Don't need that anymore either. Less instantiation is always good. I definitely don't mind less instantiation. Okay, yeah, I mean that's not terrible. So the only thing left is I need some way to track my monsters to spawn. Needs to line up with the game objects that I've just generated. So I think I'm just going to make a quick link class that just ties the two together, and then I can call it done. So when I instantiate somebody, I essentially say, here's a link to that monster. Actually, you know what? Since every non-player character can only have a single instance set of a game object, why don't I just put it inside the non-player character class? Right? There's no reason not to. I'm just making it a property because just in case on this set, I'm just going to put some private variables around this. So get is pretty simple. Set is a little more crazy. So if you say, I want to set a new model instance, we're going to say, if the model instance is not null, we should probably destroy it. Now I don't like having this all on one line. That's like fugly to the extreme, so let's clean up that, make our code look nice. There we go. So they get to carry their own model instance. I'm actually even tempted to put like an instantiate monster inside the function call. Tempted. I'll fight with that idea a little more in a bit. But for now, we're just going to say the new monster say here we have monsters to spawn with our monster index. There we go. So now we have a link between all of the game objects in place and our non-player characters, which we're telling it to spawn. Downside being that I have to instantiate more classes as I generate more things in a fight. So for example, if I go into my grid right now, and this is going to be difficult because I added a lot to my grid. Whoop. Nope, that's a party script. Grid, where are you? Oh, there it is. So let's see here. I need to find my NPCs now. Oh, hey, look, it's a bat. And actually, we're going to make this like 3, right? We had 3 bats before. Oh, they're already in there. Cool. So we've got some bats. We've got... is everything done? Well, is the information loading done? We haven't done any of the turn sequencing, but the turn sequencing is all event driven, so that should be actually really freaking easy. The non-player character needs the same start functionality as the player character. That's the other piece of information here. There's no UI to update, so to speak, but we definitely want that to be going through the system. And the bat probably needs the new information we just pumped in. Yeah, you're going to have a base health of like 3, just in case. And yes, bats are flying creatures. That should be good. Trying to think of anything else that needs to happen here, because there's kind of a lot of moving parts inside combat. The combat itself is nice and encapsulated, but the moving pieces inside of it are what need to essentially handle the setup here. So the combat UI needs to do the initial run of whose turn and what are we doing. So let's see here. Actually, this doesn't have to be public. Start is just kind of a function. And let's get our handy dandy markers in here, because otherwise this is going to get real hard to figure out what's coming from where. Guys, if I'm going too fast, if things I'm saying don't make any sense, let me know. I'm happy to kind of slow down or explain what the heck is going on. I'm happy to answer questions when I can. So we need to find the first able character. So I'm going to assume that there's at least a character in the party, right? There should be. There should always be a character in the party. So we're going to go for... and we need some helper functions here. Let's see, we have our player choice UI. You know what? I'm just going to put some references to things in here, just to make my life easy. There we go. Here's our choice root and our resolution root. Let's see here. Start, we have our player choice UI. So, okay. So we're going to set the necessary components to visible or invisible, and then proceed to do the setup inside the choice root. So the action choice root has some children that need to get handled. Specifically, we need to go so far as to say, well, you've got all these buttons. We need to figure out like what button is what and where things come from. Also, we have the action header. And let's see here, it goes action header, just slash text. And I guess I should pass in a player character. Here's his character name, or her character name, or its character name. So we set the name, and then for now I'm just going to keep attack as the only option. I'm actually going to manually turn off everything else. And then I'll turn them on as I do things, or as I make things available. Just so that there's no confusion here. Paft asks, for WebGL, how do I save and load data? XML and resources folder or player preferences? So the stuff we do at work is very dynamic. Unfortunately, we're not really able to save a lot of resources. I definitely don't use XML. Most of my stuff is written in JSON, and I tend to use JSON parsers when possible. Also, a lot of our content comes from a web server, so unfortunately, it's not stored locally. I make XML HTTP queries, and that sends off to the server and tends to come back with, well, it doesn't tend to, it always comes back with JSON blobs. And those JSON blobs allow the game to parse the information in them. I mean, we kind of cloudify our save data, so you don't have to keep like an actual save file. So yeah, that's kind of how we handle it. For this game, if I were to do a WebGL version, I probably would dump something. There's a... So for the game itself, I like to have all of the information kind of coded into the Unity format, because Unity does a really good job of compressing things down. If I had to have something that lived in a non-Unity file, player preferences is one place to put it. There's also a persistent data folder, so I'd probably have something like settings live inside that persistent data folder, so that on the same machine, you don't have to keep reloading your settings or resetting up your settings each and every time you set something. That's how I do it. So let's see here. Well, I'm glad you're already following, Paft. You know, I pushed past the 800 follower point recently. I'm trying to make that kind of last press forwards towards the 1,000 follower point. We're getting there, bit at a time. Granted, early morning streams I know are not huge with the game development crowd. Most of us programmers like to do that thing called sleeping till noon, or, you know, on a work day we might sleep till 10, but it's we're still getting there. It's a little more of a startup than before, but we're still getting there. Options to update references. Interesting. Visual Studio is trying to get a little smart with me. Okay, so we've got choose attack action. And for now, we're not going to do the sub-actions. We'll break the actions into sub-actions later. Mostly because the sub-actions are keyed off of the information that's in the player character that isn't quite there yet. So if you're holding a sword, you should know that when you hit attack, your sword will go to swing, thrust, or like parry or something as your actions. And that information isn't encoded into the weapons yet, so we have to do only one piece of info at a time here. So just getting ourselves to attack, even if we're using our bare fists, is kind of the way that I'm going about this. So choose attack action, and I want everybody to have their choices encoded before we kind of call it complete. Yeah, so I'm just going to go through the characters in order, picking up their actions, and then I'm probably going to dive into, okay, now that the players have picked their actions, the monsters are going to fight back, or the players are going to do their thing, and we'll intersperse their actions with everyone else's actions. So everyone will do the great initiative roll at the beginning, and then we'll kind of figure out what order everybody is in. I just need to kind of figure out how I want to handle a lot of this as well. I'm tempted to put an interface behind player character and non-player character so that they can do their actions. I'm also kind of tempted to just figure out how to intersperse the two with each other. Okay, so choose attack action, on click, I just need to hand it the combat UI object, and then say you choose the attack action if you click on this button. I'll make this private. A little encapsulation is a good thing. Then we say set there we go. So we do the UI set, and then the only other piece of information here, you know what, I'm just, once again, more helper functions here. Because the more helper functions I have in here for little bits and pieces of code that need to be encapsulated and used repeatedly, the better I'm going to be at this whole thing. So we say, okay, we're going to add one. Let's see. So we add one to the current player choice index. We then say if that is less than the characters, then we're going to just move to the next character. After we've gone through all our characters, we need to start the actual combat round. And this is where things would get interesting. Because this is where everybody starts diving in on their handling of the situation. Let's see here. So I do need that initiative list now, pretty much. I also need to do some kind. Well, I need to come up with some way to store the player action as well, because the player action is kind of a vital piece of information, right? You say attack with sword. Okay, well, I need that sword's attack information. I need that player's attack choice for whether they chose thrust or swing. I need all that information needs to come in some kind of like digestible struct, or I need to set the information inside of a I'll need to think about that. Well, this is more architecture that I haven't planned, and so putting things into place one piece at a time is a little difficult because there are a lot of moving pieces inside combat. Okay, well, I'm going to look up in my Google Docs how I actually planned on having combat work, because I had this all spec'd out. I have my own RPG system. Like, I went a little overboard. I made my own RPG system for this setup. Game mechanics, dice rolls. Yeah, I want to know how those work. Specifically for something like order of operations. That's the big thing here. Also, I can't help but note that, I mean, I'll show you guys what I've got here. Advanced classes. So, okay, here's all our class information. Classes, races, and you can see I've got a friend helping me out with the with the writing side, because my writing could be a little stronger sometimes. Oh god, I forgot about all the skills too. The skills will change how things work significantly. Oof. More things to implement on the player character. Maybe that'll be tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll put skills into the player character class just so that I can figure out exactly... Oh, here's initiative. Cool. Initiative's pretty basic. It's actually like set in stone. Coordination and reason. Really? That's it? Alright. So... It's a derived stat, so I can just do that. This is, what was it? I said it's coordination and reasoning. I wonder why I made reasoning part of your initiative. I mean, okay, so the better your coordination, the faster you'll react. That makes sense, right? Because if we remember, coordination is our physical control. So it's kind of dexterity is pushed into coordination. That makes sense. Reasoning, that's an interesting choice. Why would I guess it's your mental control. So if you're able to not be shocked by things, except that feels like that would be more like resolve or composure. Maybe it's not your ability to... I don't know. I wrote stuff for a reason. I'm going to keep with that for now, but I may shift some of that around. And yes, Paft is correct. That's a lot of brainstorming. RPG systems are not easy to make. I spent a fair amount of time getting all of this put into place such that... as I proceed to go through this, I didn't want to get caught up on using an existing RPG system and then having copyright things thrown at me. And I also didn't want to get caught up on the design of the RPG system while I'm also designing the game. And so I ended up doing kind of a hybrid of systems that was based very much around kind of all kinds of stuff that I liked. I went between the Warhammer Fantasy roleplay system to the system used in the old Crusaders of the Dark Savant and Wizardry series to standard, D20 D&D. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I've kind of been inspired by as I created this. So, okay, we've got initiative. So we just go through and put everyone in initiative order, right? That's actually really freaking easy. So, private. Do I want this to be a list? I think I want this to be a list. Yeah, I do. Yeah, list will make it easier for me to shift things. I could do an array. I don't care so much to. Now, this is the interesting part. I can't just drop player characters and non-player characters into the same list. It just doesn't work that way, unfortunately. Excuse me. Still waking up slightly. I can't just drop everybody into the same list, as much as I would love to. I'm tempted to put some kind of like, I could put an interface on everybody. That seems overkill. I could downcast everybody to an object, which is also overkill. It's funny, it just feels like my current way of handling a lot of this. A lot of it is overkill, as if I haven't done some of the architecture in here correctly. I mean, maybe the two should subclass off of each other. Some kind of, well, no, they can't. Once again, one comes from scriptable object, one comes from mono behavior. And I don't think those, let's see if they have a common base. I'm gonna just check real quick here. I don't think they have a common base though. I think their common base is the Unity object class. Okay, mono behavior goes from behavior, which is a kind of component, which is, yeah, a kind of object. So eventually they do make it down to the Unity engine object class, which is something, I suppose. You know what? For now, screw it. That's what I'll do. It's only 2 object types. If I need to get more if I need to get more in depth, I can handle the depth later. Let's see here. So we have to sort everybody based on their initiative. So for characters, that's not too difficult, right? Or actually, for any one side, that's not difficult. It's just for the... Oh, this shouldn't be too hard. For each player character in characters, right? I could just check initiative like that. So we just have to do smart insertion into this list. So initiative list dot add. Hey, the spammers are back to writing in English. That's almost impressive, but not really. They're also back to almost having like decent names, which is unfortunate because that means the spammers are taking up people's names inside the system. Let's see here. So we know everybody in the list is player characters when we're first inserting other player characters into the list, right? So this should be a fairly simple matter. I'm actually going to insert the monsters first because there's there technically should pretty much always be more monsters than player characters. Mostly. We'll see if that's the case later on, but so as is, this won't work because obviously there isn't any sorting going on, and we do need to keep this sorted. So, and guys, I'm only here for another 10 minutes. If you have any questions that you're burning to ask, let me know. I'm happy to do so. I'm actually just going to dump them into the list and leave myself a to-do. Sort by initiative. Same here. Cool. I'm trying to think of anything else. So I sort them by initiative, and then I just need to run combat. So what running combat is going to persist, or consist, not persist. What it's going to consist of is the following. So we have a couple pieces in this puzzle that need to get taken care of. Specifically, processing combat itself has to be a coroutine. And what coroutines are is a kind of function that runs on the main thread, and it is essentially a pausable function. It's a function that has multiple kind of exit and entry points. It doesn't actually have multiple entry points, but what it's able to do is it's able to halt its execution, store its current state, and then come back and continue processing at a later time. And this all happens on the main thread, so you don't even need to do any like thread safe shenanigans to your code. It just works, right? That's all there really is to it. It's just a thing that works. I need to hit apply and then delete that. Oh, the other thing that needs to happen is I need to hide all the UI. So the action choice root needs to get set to that, and the action resolution root gets set to true, so that I can bring up the text of what's happening. And then as process combat ends, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the current character choice back to 0, and we're going to reset this again. The reason I'm using the actual index instead of just 0 is eventually we will have to, there we go, eventually we'll have to come back around and do the checks for if somebody's dead. So if their health is less than 0, we need to take care of that problem. There's a lot of processing that needs to get added to this, but for now, in terms of the basic things we can take care of, the end of combat stuff is pretty simple. It's the start of combat stuff that's going to be, I'd say, a little more difficult. So we say start, and then what? We need to go through each person and their stored action. So we need to start doing the action storage. And I'm going to leave all of this to tomorrow at this point, because I've only got 5 minutes to go before I have to take off. So I'm going to start wrapping up. Thank you guys for joining me. I'm going to play around with my combat once just to see, okay, you can see names are appearing. And it's just in a loop, right? Nothing attacks right now. Also, there's only one guy. Why is there only one guy? I thought I added 3. Let's double check this grid node. Yeah, it says there are 3. Scripted fight. Are you not initializing everybody correctly? That's bizarre. That is really bizarre. I wonder why it's only instantiating one. Because there's only one bat here. He's the only one getting created. But it's obvious that when he gets created, it's like he's the third instance, because you'll note 0 should be here, 1 should be here, and 2 should be here. So the 2 guy is getting made. But for some reason, he's like the only one being generated. It's like it's not generating multiples of the prefab when I tell it to. Test is getting called 3 times. 3 guys are getting made. Where'd they go? That is the question. Oh, okay, I know. The fact that bat. Okay, I know. So I need to make copies. I essentially need to say that not only is monsters to spawn, like I shouldn't just be making copies of the game object, I should also be making copies of the NPC player, or the NPC object, because what's happening is there's a single NPC object, and as I generate multiple ones, each time I generate a new one, because the model instance is a singleton for all intents and purposes, it just it keeps nuking the old ones, which is unfortunate. I was really hoping that this would be like a good, I have made an instance of something, not man, that's unfortunate. Yeah, I need to figure out an easy way to not use that bat as shared information, but to actually make copies of it. I wonder if I can just call copy on it. It makes sense. I should be able to, but you never know. Just trying to fix this very quickly. We'll see if I'm actually able to fix it as quickly as I hope I can. Okay, step 1. Can I make a copy of this? That's what I want to know. Get instance ID. Okay. Can I just do this? That'd be great if I could. All right. that seems about right. That should make copies of things, I hope. We'll see. No, there we go. I'm getting copies of things again. Great. Alright guys, it has been a blast. Thank you very much for joining me. If you guys haven't seen the crazy stuff I'm doing before, I'm working on a first-person dungeon crawling game a la Wizardry or Legend of Grimrock, but not real-time. And I'm just doing this piece at a time in Unity every morning, Tuesday through Friday. I also I'm trying to get a stream in on Monday. I managed it this week. We'll see if I can pull it off next week. Monday's a little difficult because Sunday night I tend to stay up way too late. But that said, I'm trying. So we'll see. And weekends I definitely like to pull off a stream or two as well. So, if you guys hit the follow button below, you'll see each time I come online, you'll see me make a little more progress. Tomorrow we're going to dive in on more combat stuff. Getting initiative sorted out, we're going to figure out how to architecture our attacks so that every object, every non-player character and player character can pick what it wants to do in a turn and then proceed to execute that attack or that that endpoint, whatever it is. Cast spell, run away, whatever it wants to do. So, that'll probably be tomorrow and maybe even the next day. We'll see. Thanks a lot for joining me again, guys. It's been great. I will catch you all tomorrow. Later.